I'd like to get started. There are quite a few more seats, so please find them and find yourself some shade. It's a beautiful day, absolutely beautiful day, but it will be hot if you stay sitting or standing rather in the sun. So please come and have a seat. So there's still a seat up here. No, there's one for me. There we go. There's my brother. Okay. So first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming. What a beautiful day, and I'm going to try to hold it together, but I may or may not. What I was saying to someone earlier is people are being too nice. You know, when people are nice, you feel it, and you feel the love, and there's a lot of that here today, so thank you for that, and anyway, we will go on. So for those who don't know me, I'm Ann MacDowell. I'm the oldest of Mom and Dad's 3 kids. My brother Doug and my brother Ned here next to Mom. There's a very simple format today. It's just about sharing our memories of Dad and enjoying being together. Enjoying being together with other people who knew and loved Dad as we all did. So we're going to have first some thoughts and memories from family members, then some thoughts and memories from friends, and then we're going to have some refreshments together and hopefully continue to share those memories and thoughts of Dad. So a few things from Mom, first of all. She wrote, "Bill was a wonderful and caring partner. He was always thinking about others and their needs. He loved his family and enjoyed their presence. The more they visited, the happier he was." And I would say that the same applied to Dad's friends and his colleagues. He would have loved to have been here with all of you today. As I've looked through the sympathy cards, and also I've looked through other notes that were in Dad's papers, there were a number of themes about Dad which came out loud and clear. The first is that he was a teacher. He always wanted to share what he knew with others. Those of us who've had the benefit of his teaching all of our lives didn't necessarily always appreciate that. We wanted to figure things out for ourselves. But now that he's gone, we find ourselves regularly thinking, "Ooh, I'd like to ask Dad about that." Dad was really hardworking, and he was amazingly energetic. For years, Martin and I have marveled at how much he managed to fit into his days and also his nights, things like, wearing a light so he could keep gardening even when it was dark. He was a wonderful mentor. There are many people who talked about what they learned from him. He was a mentor extraordinaire, one person said, thoughtful, fair, passionate, and detailed. And I think a lot of you will recognize that word, detailed, in terms of your experiences with Dad. Another one said he was an endless source of encouragement and good counsel. And a number of people said he was a father figure or a grandfather figure to them, even if they weren't related. He was a force. He was a strong guy. Somebody said strong and fierce, passionate and loving. I think all of those are apt. And I would add he was persistent. He wasn't easy to say no to. He was always interested as well in what people are doing, what people were learning, and learning things himself. And as one friend said, you could see it in his eyes. He would really engage. Dad loved to talk things out. I loved one comment in particular. This person said, "You've been an amazing example, particularly of how to disagree agreeably." He was a forerunner in working to protect the earth. He loved the land. He worked tirelessly to protect it, and he loved his garden. It was his passion. My children picked up on this very, very early on. I have a little picture here that my son did when he was 6. Charlie's over there. And this picture shows Dad on the Empire tractor, which is the one over there, with a lot of trees in the background. It was obviously before the deer fencing, because there was a deer in the middle of the orchard. And there are a bunch of birds flying around near the tree. So, and there's a cart on the back of that Empire. So there is work going on. There are things that are happening with that tractor. Another thing I found when I was going through papers was a story that our daughter Katie wrote when she also was very little. She said once there lived a gardener, and his name was Bill. He gardened day to night. He woke up at 6 o'clock and got dressed. He started to garden. "I will go to bed," Bill said at 5 o'clock. Now, those of you who know Dad well know that there are some errors in this story. Dad seldom saw 6 o'clock in the morning. He was a night owl who definitely didn't go to bed at 5 o'clock. He didn't go to bed early at all. But Katie got the essentials right. He was a gardener, and he gardened day to night whenever he could, which is why we wanted to have this gathering here next to the garden where he's had so many happy hours. So Dad was one of 5 children. We're fortunate to have his older brother, Uncle Johnny, and his 2 younger brothers, Uncle Ned and Uncle Ted, with us today. And I'm going to pass over to Uncle Johnny.
Greetings all. I'm going to mention,
That's the 2 of them, by the way. That's the
as I'm just about to say, I'm going to tell you 3 stories of adventures Bill and I had together, and one of them has to do with golf. 2 are wintertime, 1 is summer, so let's put the summer sandwiched in between. There was 2 blocks away from where we used to live in Scarsdale, New York. There was a road that had a little depression in the top of it, and when it rained, it'd be a huge puddle there. Well, this was a pain in the neck in the summertime, but in the wintertime, it made a wonderful, smooth little pond. And it was about 1 inch deep, and it could actually freeze on proper cold weather to that depth, so it'd be solid. And one morning, Saturday morning, we had one of those days that had rained the day before, and now it was rock hard ice. And we went out there one morning, and we rode our bicycles over there, and put the bicycles down at the curb and started to run and skid and slide and on our backs, on our fronts, having a great time. And then it was probably Bill who suggested this, because he always was a little bit more adventurous than I was. And he said, "Why don't we ride our bikes, see if we can keep our bikes up?" So we did. And we had limited success staying upright. And the whole adventure ended when Bill took a bad spill, and he was tangled up underneath his bike down at the far end. And this thing was about 40 feet long and 15 feet wide. It was a great big pond. And yeah, you're the type, you would like this too. You and your brother both. You'd like that. So we got him untangled, and he said, "I want to go home. I don't feel so good." So we started to head home, and I looked over at him, and I saw blood drops on the front of his winter jacket. And I said, "Bill, you're bleeding somewhere." And we found he had a cut right underneath his chin. And it was not a dangerous bad cut, but it was not a little simple thing either. So we got home, and Mother fixed him up. 35 years later, 40 years later, Bill every once in a while would say, "Johnny, I want you to check out my scar." And I'd say, "Yeah, well, I can hardly see it." "No, but you gotta feel it." So I turned my hand, and yeah, there'd be a little lump there. Anyway, that's one winter story. Summer story has to do with golf. We summered, for those who don't know our history as well as the family does, Our folks had a place up in Pauling, New York, which is about 70 miles north of the city. And we got there in 1936, had a house built. And I know it was 36 because we young boys could climb up onto the roof and check out the chimney, and in the cement around the flue, 1936 drawn with a nail right in it. So that's when it all started. Well, a fellow named Lowell Thomas, who most of you know and remember, was a noted and famous news commentator in the 20s, 30s, and 40s of the 1900s, was the prime mover for establishing kind of the Quaker Hill colony up in Pauling, New York. And we weren't up on Quaker Hill, but we were halfway up Quaker Hill. And we're a part of this thing. And he also established a golf course. And when I was about 13, maybe 14, I went up there and tried my hand at caddying. Well, there wasn't a lot of activity, and there'd be days when I wouldn't even get a job, and I'd ride my bike back home about 4 miles up the hill and back down it to Gorman. And one day somebody said to me, you know, there's a foursome that's going to start up, and we're looking for caddies and somebody that we can count on kind of regularly. He said, you have a brother, right? I said, yeah. Well, how old is he? I said, he's 2 years younger than I am. Would he caddy? I said, he'd love to caddy, because he'd already said, when can I come up? Can I caddy? And I said, you're not quite old enough yet. Well, this forced the issue. Anyway, so we said every Tuesday, all summer long, this group is going to get together. And there were 4 of them. One was named Carl Hogan, and he was the one I caddied for, and he was the only good golfer of the 4. And he was capable of shooting low, and it was a 9-hole course, and they only played 9 holes. He could shoot 42, 41, 40 easily, sometimes high 30s. Once he actually hit par, 36. The only good golfer. Another one was a fellow named Lynn Sumner, who was CEO of the Sumner Advertising Agency in Madison Avenue, New York, where we all know that's where advertising is. And that's who my brother caddied for. And then we had another fellow there, Lowell Thomas himself. He was part of the foursome. And he didn't have a caddy. He pulled his own little, it wasn't a handmade cart, but I don't even know if carts were available back in the late 30s, early 40s. But that's the period we're talking about. And the other one was Tom Dewey, the politician, who in 1948 ran against Truman and lost. And he didn't need a caddy because his caddy was his personal bodyguard, since at the time he was governor of New York State. And the fellow's name was Cappy, and named Capasur, and everybody called him Cappy. I don't know to this day what his first name is, but he had his handgun right there and all. So that lasted for 2 years. And just so you'd like to know that Bill had the unusual opportunity of being with some pretty highfalutin people, and he was young enough, as it was, not to think that they were highfalutin at all. They were just common people, and they were good. Anyway, that's the summer story. And the last story is, I was at school one afternoon. I think I was probably 12, possibly 13, and Bill would have been, he's 2 years younger, he would have been 10 or 11. And I had the bright idea, and it was just before Christmas, a week or so before Christmas. We hadn't bought our Christmas tree, never did until just a few days before Christmas. That was always the way it was. And Bill and I decided that we would go out and try to find our own Christmas tree. I had this bright idea in school, and I came home and I said, Bill, would you like to see if we couldn't find a Christmas tree, go over to the woods? He said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Again, his desire to be adventurous. And it was cold. It was very cold. But we went, and our mother, who was let's say, unusual, unique. We got away with more crazy things as kids than would have. No other mother here would have come close to letting her kids do what we did. Anyway, she said, sure. So I got my little old Swedish saw, and off we headed. And we had about a mile to go before we got down to the edge of Scarsdale into a place called New Rochelle. And then we walked through New Rochelle for 2/3 of a mile maybe, through on concrete roads. In the 30s, some developer had taken this land, cleared it, and put roads in. And depression wouldn't allow him to go any further. The whole thing fell apart. So this area, a big area, remained, just with roads, concrete roads, and grasses. We had about 2/3 of a mile to walk through before we got to the woods. And there were no houses on that side of the road. Woods, just solid woods, and they went in for a long way. Well, I thought we were going to find lots of choices of Christmas trees. How little did I know. First of all, Christmas trees up in that area aren't the Christmas trees that you buy. The only trees that we saw were little scrawny, probably hemlocks. And you don't want to have a hemlock as a Christmas tree. And we didn't find anything bigger than about 5 feet, and a few big ones that were big for that area, with about 20, 25 feet, scrawny because they were fighting for sunlight and whatever. Well, we ended up with no tree. It started to get dark, because this was just before Christmas. It was probably a few days from the shortest day of the year. So we we headed out of the woods, got out of the woods before it was pitch dark, and headed home, got into Scarsdale, and the first house that we got to in Scarsdale, on the right-hand side of the road, there was a beautiful, maybe 30 feet of shrubs going across the front, got to the corner, and along the side of the property was another 30 feet of shrubs, nice high shrubs, and right there at the corner, just inside the fence, was his Christmas tree, and it was gorgeous. I said, Bill, there's our tree. He said, Johnny, you can't do that. That belongs to somebody. I said, yeah, I know, but they won't miss it. So I crawled over the fence. I climbed over the wooden fence, and I was pretty well hidden from the house, but because there were other shrubbery. But I thought that maybe it was the quietest could be. I thought maybe somebody could hear the saw. So I did one or two saw, and I said, Bill, is that too loud? He said, Johnny, we got to get out of here. You don't know what you're doing. And I said, Bill, we're going to have a tree. We're going to come home with a tree. And I saw one more time or two. Johnny, he said, you don't know how wrong this is. He was home. And I have thought to this day, would I really have cut that tree down if Bill had not kept after me? And I think probably before I cut much farther, I would have come to my senses and stopped. However, I don't know that for sure. Bill is the one who was the guy that put the screw in my head and said, no more. So with a certain amount of reluctance, but I can clearly recall a little bit of relief, because now I knew I was not doing anything wrong anymore. But I was afraid I'd kill the tree. So we headed for home, and we got about a block, and Bill said, Johnny, I am so cold. I can't go any farther. I'm really cold. I said, well, Bill, why don't you just stand behind me and walk behind me. There was about a 15-mile breeze coming in from the west, and we were headed into the breeze. So it was really chilly, and I was beginning to get cold, but I'd been doing some kind of active stuff, and he'd just been waiting for me. And I said, just get behind me, and so we walked a little bit, about a block, and we still had well over a mile, or about a mile to go. And he said, I can't go any farther. I just want to lie down. I just want to go to sleep. I said, Bill, that is the worst sign you can have. You've got to keep going. So he said, I can't. I said, look. And I opened my coat up. It was a zipper thing. And I said, climb in here for a little bit. So he came in, he was facing me, so our chests were together. And I closed the coat up as best I could, held it like this. And after about a minute, I said, how are you doing? He said, I'm getting a little bit warmer. I said, you ready? No. So he stayed a little while longer, and finally we decided to go. And I said, look, you get behind me, and you put your hand right in my belt. Reach up under my coat and hook it up behind my belt there, so you'll stay right with me. And then I figured, we're going to get all tangled up and we're going to fall here. And then I said, look, we're going to have to count steps. We have to make our steps work. And I thought, I bet if I get him to be occupied by something, it'll take his mind off. So I said, Bill, you count, just like the drill sergeant. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, and we started to walk. And we walked, kept walking, and he got warmer, and we got home, and we opened the door, and it was about 6:30 now. It had been dark for almost an hour, and our mother didn't seem concerned at all. And finally, she said, "Oh, you're home," or something like that. 2 more points. One quick point is I looked at the thermometer, and it was 4 degrees above 0. It was cold. And secondly, I would like to say that as far as I know, my dear brother Bill always had his moral and his ethical compass pointed straight ahead. And there are many times in my life after that I have thought of that. And from time to time it was just an idle thought. There were a few other times that I remember very clearly when I really made a decision based on Bill's example to me. So in front of all you, Bill, thank you so much for that.
I am not and never was the storyteller my older brother was. I was lucky enough, as Johnny has mentioned, to grow up in a fairly large family. I was the middle child, and they always say that's the best adjusted child of a family. Due to 2 unfortunate events in the last, actually since April of 2020, when our younger sister died, and then Bill died in September, I'm back being the middle child, and I hope I'm still okay so far as adjustment goes. Uncle Johnny did some, call him Uncle Johnny because that's the way we refer to him around our household. He referred to caddying for a while, and I've got to slip a quick story in about caddying. Same place, same location. With a friend of mine from high school who Ellen will remember, Bill Spalding, my best friend, who's been gone a lot longer than either of my siblings. And we were caddying at the same spot, and the caddy master said, we have a small party going out. We need 2 caddies, one for the wife, one for the husband. I said, okay, we didn't care. We just grabbed a bag. I happened to caddy for the wife, and my friend Bill Spalding, caddied for Edward R. Murrow, which didn't mean a thing to us at the time either. We didn't think about it, but I've thought about it since. Anyway, growing up in the middle of a family, I had 2 older brothers, one of whom you just met. Good athletes. Johnny was a kicker and a high jumper, and Bill was basically he was a terrific halfback. Number 33 made me proud every time I watched him play. When he was a senior, he decided to go out for wrestling. I had wrestled already for a year at Scarsdale High School under the football coach. And so I knew a move or 2, and Bill said, teach me a few moves. So I taught him really a few moves, and I could tell you what they were, but it's not important. He went undefeated for his whole senior year. He just had that sort of natural ability. But he had a lot of other stuff going for him as well. I'm going to refer only a little bit to the notes. Bill has a diving board out here over the pond, and I'm sure he taught his children and grandchildren some pretty good tricks on that, but he was the only kid I knew, and again I was proud of it, to do a 1.5 off a diving board. Today kids do 1.5 like nobody's business. He was, in addition to being a pretty good student, as I recall it, Johnny and I and Ted, who's here, and we're never as good a student at the studies as Bill. There's a picture here of Bill in a cast when he was at Oberlin, and the newspaper did an article saying how great it was that this young student from Oberlin could maintain a high academic standing. And I mentioned that to Bill one time. He said, I was about this close to flunking out of Oberlin. It's a bogus story if there ever was one. Anyway, he was also an Eagle Scout, and we've talked over the years about how, for each of us, Eagle Scouting has provided us with lifetimes worth of skills. I'm sure I'm looking at some Eagle Scouts out here, but that's a good memory. Bill and I also sort of resembled each other. We still do now. A few of you have mentioned who knew Bill that we resemble each other, and occasionally we'd be on a vacation together, and for fun Bill and I would dress alike and pass off as twins. and that was always fun. Another reason for me to be proud of my big brother. I'll diverge only a bit to say I don't think there's a time in my life where I haven't been proud of Bill. Just a good guy, as Johnny says, a high moral compass. In fact, in the kitchen of his room here, there's an inscription, do right and fear not. He bought into that, as I'm sure you kids did as well. And it's also the inscription on our parents' tombstone up in Paulding. And that's just another evidence of Bill's moral compass. And he was the first one to say, I've slipped. I'm not such a hot guy sometimes. At any rate, in addition to being a good athlete, he was also a great sports fan. Whether it's the Eagles or the Flyers, or whether he was playing hockey himself, he was always involved. And that was the last phone call I made to Bill. In fact, it was literally minutes after, I think, Ann, you got the phone call from the message machine. If the Eagles were playing the Giants, we always had a bet. If they were playing and they weren't playing the Giants, I was always rooting for the Eagles. So I was calling Bill, I don't know what day it was Friday or Saturday before the week he passed. He was also pretty self-aware and self-critical. You might not get that from Bill all the time, but we had one discussion fairly recently about if you were doing your career again, would you do anything differently? Would you make different moves? Would you do, because I certainly felt that way, and I was in education, and there are things if I had known then what I know now, I think I would have done a better job. And he gave me one example which related to his work as president and CEO of Burpee Seed Company. And we were talking about that, and he said, well, I should have done this and that differently or sooner or whatever. And then he said, but what I lacked was what the CEO and president of Johnny's Seeds, I don't know if you were Johnny Seeds people, I'm guessing they're more than just the MacDowell family gardeners here. But the Johnny Seed presidents, Bill said, had a vision for his company. And he said, I wish that I had imparted a vision to the Burpee Seed Company. That's sort of an aside, but it was sort of an admission as well. Bill's last years were pretty much filled with chronic pain. I think those of us who've known him through those last years knew that he struggled mightily. Ann referred to having a headlamp on as when he'd be out in the garden way past dark. I remember a phone call I made to him one time, and he said, guess where I am? I said, probably in the garden. He said, yeah. But it was more than just dark in the garden. He had the headlamp, but because he couldn't stand and he couldn't kneel, he was lying down on the blanket, or I don't know what it was, a blanket, I think, weeding certain, the beets or whatever he had to weed. He was, indomitable in terms of moving. Here's one thing nobody could accuse Bill of being, and that is being a churchgoer. So, although he doesn't have that, I think he'd give me the permission to do a Bible quote. This quote has sort of become, well, not sort of, it's become more meaningful as I've grown older. And I think anyone who's older than a certain age would understand this. This is from John 21, verse 18. When you were young, you used to put on your own girdle and go where you pleased. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hand and someone else will put your girdle on you and take you where you have no wish to go. And that is such a poignant statement. And I'm getting Johnny, me, even Ted, who's 7 years younger than I am, 10 years younger than Johnny. We are all at that precipice, and so I'm telling my own 4 children who happen to be here today, and a couple of my grandchildren, please don't take me where I don't wish to go. Bill's last comment, according to my discussion with Doug, or his last physical action. Not far from here, he was getting out of the golf cart, having been in the garden, I guess, Doug, and couldn't get back. So, and that, I'm not even certain if he regained consciousness after a few hours in the hospital, but it was a bad time. But Bill never was taken where he did not wish to go. And I think that's a benediction meant. Same thing, Bill.
Hi, I'm the youngest brother, and rather than say much, my brothers have done it proud already. I just like to sing a little song that Bill and Brother Ned and I were all singing together in the house. Was it 2 years ago or something? Anyway, those of you who are a little older, as we are, will remember chicken ain't nothing but a bird. You can boil it, break it, broil it, put it in a pan or pot. Eat it with potatoes, rice or tomatoes, chicken is still what you got. It was the dish for old Caesar and King Henry III, but Columbus was hip, he said, take my tip, chicken ain't nothing but a bird.
I promised myself I'd do a little bit of a channeling of Bill, so I'm going to put this on. Some of you may recognize it. Actually, this is his shirt too, so I'll see how long I last with this on. For those who don't know me, I'm Martin. I'm Anne's husband, and therefore the son-in-law. Dad would sometimes say, "You're a good son-in-law," and that's pretty darn good praise for somebody who was a perfectionist. There are not many times that you can be 100% sure of something, but I can categorically say that Bill was my best ever father-in-law. And Mum, you're my best ever mother-in-law as well, just for the avoidance of that. There's much discussion about the timing of this memorial service, and I hope you agree that June is a much better time to do it in this weather, certainly than early October. But there was never a discussion about the location. Right beside the garden, which was one of Bill's great loves. Presumptuously of his great loves, I've listed them in order. Jane, family and friends, gardening. Family and gardening may interchange, but Jane, you didn't. July the 2nd and 3rd this year was going to be a big date for the 4 of us, and myself, Mum and Dad. It was the date when Jane and Bill would have been married double the time that we were, darling. But sadly, we can't celebrate that date quite as we imagined. It would have been 34 years. We'd have been married 34 years. They'd have been married 68 years. I first met Dad, Bill, Pappy, Poppy, Willie, you're allowed to call him Willie, on Thanksgiving in 1985. And I do remember it was quite intimidating to come down this driveway to this wonderful home. And I remember even being more intimidated by being handed a carving knife. I'd never even carved a chicken before. But with a bit of help, I guess I passed my first hurdle. Anne told me that normally it was water skiing that was the initiation of the MacDowell family, and I would have failed that. But one of the photographs that you see of Dad in the program is he's barefoot water skiing, and that was one of his really proud achievements.
He also was flat-footed.
Oh yes, that helped. Big feet too. And I've had other tests along the way as well. We had tests with Bill along the way. We had once had a press-up competition in Kansas. So he was 56 and we were 30, 31, I can't remember. So I would do 20 press-ups, then I would do 10, and then Dad would do the combination of the two. And we would slowly reduce them over time, and eventually we lost, he won, and he was incredibly proud of that victory. I did pass one of his key tests, which was to produce grandchildren. He did say to me that before we even announced our engagement, he wasn't bothered about marriage, but he wanted grandkids. In the last 10 years or 12 years, we've been so lucky to have been on some fantastic holidays with Mum and Dad. We had a safari in Africa for Mum's 80th birthday. They toured Sri Lanka when I was living there. In fact, on the trip to Sri Lanka, they stopped over in Dubai with one of Anne's friends for 3 days, I think, and almost exhausted. He exhausted my in-laws before they even arrived, but it was great fun. We've been to Italy, to Crete, and other wonderful memories together. I used to think, I hope I have as much energy as Bill when I'm his age, and the truth is he had more energy at 80 than I have now. He was always in the garden, rushing in to go to one of his many charitable organisations. Having spent such a bit of time here to go through his old papers and files, you realise what a busy and impressive life he lived. So what legacy he leaves? His work with the numerous charitable organisations and the signs you see around this area, this locality, saying land preserved, to remind me, and I guess you guys, to what a big role he played in that initiative. The speakers that follow us are much better in telling you all the magnificent contributions he's made to this wonderful community. And those of you who know Anne will know that we'll be finding some space in our house for some of those papers and mementos of his work. And in fact, that cast is also making our way. That cast from Oberlin we still have upstairs. That will be making its way. His legacy is also the memories we all have of him. He taught me how to dig a hole for tomato plants. It's too easy to dismiss this as just absolute nonsense, any hole will do, but given his track record for tomato production, it's obviously quite important. He had to make sure his food was hot, really important. Eggs needed very careful attention when cooked. His political discussions, that's one of your favourite, Ned's favourites. And wearing very old clothes. I've got this. Doug now has his red trousers that he wore at Christmas to carry on that tradition. So we will all have our individual memories. Despite the early concerns, he did manage to get 6 wonderful grandchildren who are all here today. He loved you all very much, and he was very proud of you all. In age order, we've got Katie, Charlie, Kirsten, Jay, Colin, and Kel. And always Dad would say, "You're a good kid." Katie's last text to us to convey to her beloved papi was, Tell him I love him. I know I'm a good kid, and I hope I will continue to make him proud. I know you all will in your own ways." So 34 years ago, just behind us here for our wedding, Dad gave a lovely short speech, and it ended with a small toast with water, of course, as I'd like to end mine today. Was like us, damn few, and they're all dead. Dad, we will miss you, but your legacy will endure.
Jay, do you want to come up?
My name's Jay Ash, and I'm a friend of Doug's. And Doug asked me to speak on his behalf. I'd like to say it's truly an honor, Doug, to do this. Your dad, talk about mentorship with the brothers, and Mr. MacDowell, Mr. Melby in the back. He taught us kids at the time a lot. And one of the things I'll remember is, and both from your dad and you and Ned, if I ever skated out of the corner, I was getting hacked. I was getting scars on the ankles, on the arms, it didn't matter. You didn't leave without a mark. And he was such a competitor, and it's something that, as an athlete, I really appreciated. So, anyway, this is what Doug wrote. You may do better than me on this.
Hi, and thanks for coming today, but mostly I want to thank you for helping to enrich my father's life. I try to keep this as short as possible, which, as you probably know, wasn't my pop's way. I'm Bill's second kid, and I didn't think I could speak to you today, so thanks much to Jay, who is delivering this for me. From an early age, he taught us as kids the golden rule and made sure we learned from it and what it meant and that we lived it. He also taught me to stick up for the underdog. I'm sure that you here have known his warmth and loyalty, two of his best traits. Some others I knew to be this: hard work, tirelessly working for his causes he was passionate about. He gave tirelessly for folks in need. Determination, short story to follow. Pursuit of excellence, being a loving dad, grandfather, friend, uncle, brother. One trait, determination, stands out to me. In his middle to later 40s, Pop decided he was going to be a barefoot water skier. He set about this accomplishment with no proper instruction and in the worst of conditions. With proper instruction and good conditions, he likely would have been successful. Almost right away, as I learned later, with professional instruction and the best conditions. The results of his efforts, armed with none of these, were numerous, and I mean numerous, and spectacular and extremely painful, violent wipeouts. We would pull up next to him in the boat, and some of the times he could barely speak. I'm sure this type of activity was a contributor to his horribly painful spine later in life, but he succeeded where most tough guys I know would have gone and given up a long, long time before that. And I can say I would have been one of them. You guys were nuts. Pop toiled tirelessly for his nonprofits that he loved and would be in the garden with lights so he could stock the nonprofit organic veggie stand. This he did for years, simultaneously fighting pain. Did I leave out stubborn earlier? He started playing hockey later in life, and what he lacked in skill, he attempted to make up for with determination, heart, and penchant for rough play. I love you. Everybody here, and nothing could ever change that. He would always be completely blown away when he was wrong in business, because he just couldn't comprehend anyone treated anyone like that. It always blindsided him. One of the things that I am most proud of as his son was a mentorship program he started and spearheaded. The purpose of the program was to mentor minority men, not sure about women at that point, to become CEOs, CFOs, and/or business owners. He did this in his late 60s, which was very progressive. In the late 60s, I'm sorry. His mother used to sing to him and his siblings a lullaby when they were a little about 3 little froggies. Dad sang this to her when she became unresponsive and while she was leaving this earth. Of course, I'm crying while I'm writing this. A truly beautiful memory. I will miss sharing with him stuff we didn't always agree on, and lots of stuff we did. I still look to reach out to him daily, and I'm sad when I remember that the ship has sailed. He wasn't always present, but you knew he was there if you needed him. In closing, I should add, timing, lack of pain, made his passing about as perfect as it could have been, and for that I am extremely grateful. I love you and miss you, Pop.
MacDowell.
Thank you guys all for being here. Poppy would be real happy to see you all. I'm Jim MacDowell, Poppy's 4th grandkid. I want to start this off by saying sorry, Poppy, for all grammatical errors I'm about to make. When Poppy first passed, it was very hard to believe. I was at school in Delaware, and only a few days before, we were picking raspberries together here in the garden that he loved so much. Once I came home, I started to come to terms with everything, and he started appearing in my dreams, which I like to think of his way as of visiting me. The first time he was in my dream, we were just shaking hands and smiling at each other. The second time, we were sitting at the dining room table here in the kitchen, and he was asking about school and life, and how school and life were going, since he hadn't seen me in a while, something he did every time I came home for a brief visit. The last time I saw him, he was asking me to help my cousins and Moppy move everything out of the house here, making sure that the love of his life was taken care of. I hope he's in my dreams again soon, because even though it was sad, it was great to see him. Now I'd like to talk about Poppy and his involvement with my youth hockey years. Poppy helped me in my first ice skating lesson here in the pond alongside my dad and my mom. After that, he went to tons of my games. Sometimes he would wait after the game to congratulate me, and when he didn't, I know I could have done better. It was tough. Before Kel and I had licenses, he would drive us to practices and games. In my early youth years, Poppy was driving Kel and I back from practice in Mercer, New Jersey, where we played on the same team. Since Kel and I were so young, we sat in the back of the old Ford Explorer. In the back, there was a MIDI radio control that would change the car's radio station and volume. Kel and I sat in the back, retuning the radio, while Poppy got frustrated at his malfunctioning radio. When he caught on to the fact that it was his 2 grandsons, he thought it was hilarious. We drove home the rest of the way laughing. It's crazy to see how many people's lives he has touched, but it's also not that shocking, because I always knew he had that effect on people. When I was making my first friends in elementary school here in New Hope, a lot of my friends' parents came up and said, "Are you Bill MacDowell's grandson?" They knew him from his various charity work and the organic veggie stand that everyone loves so much. It's a weird but amazing feeling to be so proud of your grandfather for having touched so many people. I want to thank Poppy for all the life lessons he taught me. He taught me to be kind and take care of others. He taught me to laugh. He taught me to be tough and resilient, and most importantly, love those around you. I miss you, Poppy.
Is there anyone else, any other family members who'd like to say something? Yeah. Okay, I can't see. Is Miles here? He wasn't sure if he could make it because he was in South Carolina. No, okay. Bill Tinsman?
This is humbling, to say the least. Most of you don't know me, and that's perfectly fine. But what you do know is this. And I have to tell you, without Bill MacDowell, or Willie as I used to call him, not knowing that that was a nickname, without Mr. MacDowell, there would be an interstate highway right there, Route 202. Bill tirelessly put together committee after committee to work with Senator Arlen Specter, who's here in the crowd, Richard. But anyway, speak of mentorship, I got involved with Bill in the early 80s in a preservation initiative to find people to serve on committees to preserve the soul of Solebury Township. He sat on the Audubon Society board. He sat on the Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve board, which he talked me into serving on also. But Bill had a direction for sure. The stories that the family have told are precious. The story, I don't have a story to tell you, and I don't do speeches, but what I can tell you is, again, without Bill MacDowell, Solebury would be a different place, and Bucks County would be a different place. He was a consummate preservationist, a consummate conservationist, from the garden to this place we call home. It couldn't have been done without him. And I'll just leave it at that. I dearly miss him.
Rich?
Hello, everyone. First of all, I have to apologize for I kind of missed the memo on the dress code today. But I guess my thought process was if Bill was here, I would be out-dressing him by about 2 or 3 times. But it's great to be here today. First, I just want to thank you, Ann and Doug and Ned, and especially Jane for inviting us and including us in this celebration of our old friend. It's an incredible day, and it's fitting, as many people have said, that we're right by the garden that he loved so much, on the property that he loved so much, among the people that he loved so much and that loved him. We first met Bill back probably around 2005 when my wife Maggie, my name is Rich Strucker, by the way, and my wife Maggie were friends with Bill's for about 16 years. When she first started working at Bucks County Audubon Society, we met Bill. Bill was on the board at the time. And Bill stepped up and became kind of a mentor for Maggie and someone, it's kind of a sounding board for her. She was new at the not-for-profit game, and she quickly found out that he was somebody that she could lean on and somebody she could rely on, go to for help or support, and someone, most importantly, that she could trust. And Bill had many gifts, as many people have alluded to, but one that we felt was he had a superpower to read people's hearts. And in Maggie's case, Bill from the get-go understood Maggie's heart and her passion. And that framed the filter that he looked at her through and how he knew her and how he felt about her. And it allowed him to trust her. And that trust was invaluable to Maggie. And as many of you know, trust from Bill was not something that he easily handed out. And when he did, you were very careful not to mishandle it. And she didn't, and they had a great relationship built on that trust for many, many years. I met Bill shortly thereafter in 2005. It was at a Bucks County Audubon event. We were sitting at a table, and Bill, this 73-year-old guy, 73-year-old guy, was sitting across from me. And he was telling me how he was in a men's ice hockey league. And I was incredulous. I said, this guy's playing hockey? You gotta be kidding me. But for the next half hour, he started working on me to join this hockey. So I loved playing hockey. I didn't think I was very good, and I didn't think I was good enough to play in that league, but he worked on me and worked on me. Finally, I gave in, as is not unusual with Bill. I gave in and I joined this hockey league. And that was the beginning of our friendship, because we used to carpool to play hockey in Lawrenceville. So every Sunday, from September to April, we got together and we drove to Lawrenceville. And those rides were filled with just lots of conversation, lots of sarcasm, lots of irreverence, political discussions. Bill would discuss politics. I would just nod my head and listen. We would have debates about things. We had a recurring debate, and Doug knows about this one, about what the fastest route to Lawrenceville was. And that's something you would think would be one and done. You'd have a conversation. That went on over and over and over again on our trips. But those rides and those conversations and that time together created a bond for both of us and a friendship for both of us that lasted many years. But that friendship kind of went away when we got on the hockey rink, because typically Bill was on one team and I was on the other, and invariably in every game I'd be skating down the ice with the puck or without the puck, and I would feel a stick come up between my legs, and he would hook me in the groin, or he would butt end me in the ribs, and I would turn around, wanting to take the person's head off, and I would look, and there was Bill with his impish grin on his face, and he just thought it was the funniest thing. He just really got a kick out of it. But my wife would say that Bill and I were two peas in a pod, that we were cut from the same cloth. That's her nice way of saying that we were both a pain in the ass. We were both relentless in the things that we pursue. We're both opinionated. We're both quick to a debate. And we're that type of people. We like to argue, and as Maggie would tell you, we both think we're right most of the time. Aren't we, honey? No? But we came to treasure a lot in our relationship with Bill. One of the things that we treasured the most from afar was Bill's relationship with Jane. And Bill loved you fiercely, and it was just a beautiful thing to see from afar. And while we're celebrating Bill today, we also have to celebrate who they were as a unit. Bill wasn't by himself and Jane wasn't by herself. They were together. It was always Bill and Jane. And Jane, you helped make Bill the man he was. Sorry.
It's true.
But more importantly, you allowed him to become the man he became. So you were the perfect counterpoint to him. When Bill had hard edges, Bill having hard edges, you helped soften those edges. When he had weak moments, he wouldn't admit to it, but when he did, you were there with strength and support for him to get him through it. So as much as we're celebrating Bill today, we also, in our hearts, want to celebrate Jane for your relationship. One of the things that was the greatest reward for me with Bill, it's kind of a funny thing, but it's something that I take with me, is that for some reason, I was able to make Bill laugh. And his laughter was such a gift to me. It was so true and sincere and heartfelt. And I'll share a story with you, and Bill and Doug knows what's coming. But this goes back to probably 2009 or 2010. It was an event that Bill and Jane had at the house here, and it was for a certain political candidate that was running for re-election to the Pennsylvania Senate seat. Bill alluded to it earlier, our inspector. So Bill and Jane had an event here at the house. It was either a fundraiser or just sort of a meet and greet with the candidate at the house, and it was a typical kind of cocktail party, late afternoon, about 20 or 30 people, shaking hands, small talk, cocktails, light hors d'oeuvres. And the pinnacle of the afternoon was going to be that our inspector was going to speak and make a few remarks to the gathered group. So he had his aides there, and you know that most politicians, they try to kind of stroke their constituents, and they want to tell you how important you are to them, and that the town you live is their favorite town, and your county is the most important county in the state, and they just kind of want to stroke things. So he had his aides there, and they were prepping him for his little speech. And anyway, so the time came for his speech, and he made his speech. We all gathered in the living room, packed about 20 people in there around the fireplace, and Arlen stood up at the fireplace and gave his speech. Now, what he actually said is kind of lost in the cloud of the intervening years. But what he did say, and that event became a source of an imitation that I did, and a running joke that Bill and I had for forever, for the last 10 years. And it was manifested by a voicemail that I left Bill, where I replayed the event, and it sort of went something like this. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight to this wonderful event. We're really, really pleased to be here. But first, before we get started, I wanted to reach out and thank Bill and June McDougal. It's really great to be at their beautiful home here in Salisbury Township. Salisbury is one of our favorite towns in Berks County. We love Berks County. Joan and I come down here all the time, and Berks is really one of our favorite counties. So thanks again to the McDougals for this. Well, Bill just loved it. I left it on his voicemail, and he thought it was right. And I mean, it was a joke till he died. It was a joke for the next 11 years. And 3 years later, I would get a call from Bill in his Arlen Inspector voice. He shared the voicemail with Bill Tinsman, and when I talked to Bill Tinsman, I would have Bill Tinsman's Arlen Inspector voice. When I would bump into Doug, I would have his Arlen Inspector voice. So it was a memory that, as I said, was a real gift to me. His laughter, and to know that I was able to make him laugh, meant so much to me. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I just wanted to finish up with something I put in the note that I wrote to the MacDowells when Bill passed, just to kind of close, and it was this. It was, my goodness,
we will miss our dear friend. Perhaps he put so much into living, there wasn't anything left to give. Or maybe some other place, wherever he is headed, needs some straightening out before all the rest of us get there. If so, we got the right guy for the job.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi. So, hi, Jerry and everybody. My name is Danny Cole, and my husband James Cole is with our sons over by the pond catching tadpoles right now, which we thought Bill would appreciate. We moved here in 2010, and very soon thereafter we discovered the organic vegetable stand over by the side of the property, and we went a few times and bought vegetables, and then we would leave. We would speak to Bill on occasion. We didn't know him, but found him charming. And over the course of the next year or 2 years, I kept saying to my husband, I don't know what it is, but I feel like we have to meet those people. We have to meet them. They're supposed to be in our lives. But somehow it's awkward. I didn't know that around here we could have just pulled up and walked into the kitchen and started hanging out with Bill. I wasn't aware of that, but through mutual acquaintance, the connection was made. And very soon thereafter, we were new to the area, didn't know many people, and Bill and Jane and the extended family, they became our best friends. And in particular, my husband and Bill had a relationship where my husband started to go missing all the time. So there would be a huge snowstorm, and then James would be gone. Well, and I couldn't reach him. Well, what had happened? Oh, he was with Bill out on the ice prepping the lake. Or he'd go missing again, and then he'd show up and pull down the driveway wearing a wetsuit and all of his scuba gear. I'm like, James, what are you doing? Oh, he was actually diving in the pond to clear the leaves out of the vents. And it went on and on. They developed a friendship and a connection that was truly special and truly heartfelt. Somebody said it earlier that Bill had the superpower of looking into people's hearts, and that is absolutely what he and James did. I also had the great pleasure of quitting my job and spending one summer gardening with Bill. And now, as I garden, everything I do, whether it's snapping off a sucker or knowing how to pick the right tomato or knowing to put the eggshells in at the bottom before you plant the tomatoes or how to water, every moment of that experience for me is about remembering Bill. And what I particularly loved once our twin boys were born 5 years ago, that they became a part of the family too. He became Poppy Bill and Moppy Jane, and they talk about, they remember, even though they're just 5, they remember this place. They had the great pleasure and honor of spending time here, of picking their first raspberries from the bushes and eating those delicious tomatoes. And that's such a gift that we will carry with us all of our lives. And just one more element. So the reason I'm speaking today, I wasn't sure if I should. I knew so many people would want to or say something about Bill, have so many wonderful memories. Sort of, why should I come up here and say something? But I was thinking about Bill, and I was like, should I do that? And I knew he would want me to. And as I was driving, and as I pull around the corner, we're now living in a different area. There, on the side of the road, are Bill MacDowell tomato cages lying on the ground. If anybody knows about what a Bill MacDowell tomato cage is, it's a very specific thing, and you don't see them very often. And we didn't have any. I was actually staking this year our tomatoes in a way that I knew Bill wouldn't approve of. And I come around the corner, and I have this thought in my head, should I say something? And there are the tomato cages. Somebody had just put them on the side of the street. So we jumped out of the car and put them into the back of our truck, and now we have Bill MacDowell tomato cages in South Carolina growing our tomatoes. So again, yes, that's all I wanted to say. He deeply touched our lives. I know he deeply touched the lives of so many people, and we're so honored and privileged to have had the opportunity to know him.
Hello, everyone. My name is George Kalianides, and I'm wearing this mask because I'm a physician. So, not to alarm you, that's just to protect me. So, I wanted to share with you several stories. First of all, my brother John, who is 2 years older than me, is currently living in Canada, and he could not come down for medical reasons. But in 1964, he first met Bill after he was assigned to be the representative of his company, which manufactured water purification systems. And he had to obviously move with his wife, and she was insistent that they move to a community which had a very high reputation in terms of their school system. And her name was Marjorie, and she did the research and concluded that Scarsdale was the community that she would be willing to move to. And she actually found the home to buy for them to move. And it turned out to be the backyard neighbor of the MacDowells. And that's how he learned about the MacDowells and became a very close friend of Bill and Jane. And then, at the time, I was in Brooklyn doing 5 years of graduate training, and I would frequently visit John at Scarsdale, and that's how I got to meet Bill and Jane as well. Now, there are several stories that I'd like to share with you, one of which was told to me by John. And it was a time when Jane was carrying Ned, and Bill was out of town. Jane went into labor, called John, and said, "Can you take me to the hospital?" And so John made himself available, and he's driving, and he's driving slowly. And Jane says, "John, it's not necessary for you to drive so slowly. Get me to the hospital." And so he did. Do you remember that story? Okay. Now, another story that hasn't been touched on is the time that my wife and I were guests at their home in Scarsdale. And in the middle of the night, Jane and Bill were wakened by a voice, not in the house, but outside the house. And it was my wife saying, "George, George." And Jane and Bill didn't come to me and wake me up. I was sound asleep. But I got in their car and went searching for my wife, who had taken a walk at night because she couldn't sleep, and she couldn't find her way back to the house. And we rescued her. And then another story that is an indication of Bill's willingness to help in all circumstances occurred at Iowa City, where we had moved because that was the first university where I had an appointment in the Department of Medicine. And I don't recall the exact date, but Bill and the family, Jane was obviously there, and Ann was there. I don't think anyone else was there. They arrived in what looked like a converted bus into a motorhome, which is fine. And we were in a community where I was a member of a swimming club, which Bill and we all went there this particular day. But the diving board was very slippery, and Bill managed to slip and came down hard on that board. And although he didn't admit it, it looked like he was having some pain. Now, I had been asked to the management of this club to update that diving board, and I went to them and I said, "You've got a problem on your hand. I have a friend who just injured his back, and you're risking a lawsuit. You've got to take care of that diving board." And that afternoon, they put up a sign, diving board closed, and within a week it was all fixed. Now, fortunately, Bill did not injure himself, but I used the occasion to get this done. Now, it was, I don't know, the next day or a day later, there was a terrific rainstorm in Iowa City, and our basement got flooded with 7 inches of rain falling. And Bill managed somehow to go out and find a water vacuum, came back with it, and sucked out all the water from our apartment that same day. And that's an example of Bill taking charge of a difficult situation and solving it. And we were grateful for that. But in addition, my wife insisted when we bought our next home that it not have a basement. And that occurred subsequently, particularly in New York, where every home has a basement. And so she had the drive to use a building plan that we had for our home in California, which had no basement. And that's what we were living in for 40 years in Stony Brook, New York, where I was also on the faculty for 24 years. So these are the memories that I recall that stand out in my mind. But I should mention that we have visited Bill and Jane and the family at this lovely property on many occasions, because we would be traveling from Long Island down to either Philadelphia or to Washington, D.C. for medical meetings. And we always enjoyed your rich hospitality, and if we couldn't meet you on the way down, we would try and meet you on the way back. And we thank you so much for this very enjoyable friendship.
I actually wasn't planning on speaking, so I'm going to go off the cuff here, but these stories are amazing, and I'll keep it brief. Like my relationship with Bill and Jane and the family, which was brief, but incredibly rich. So my wife and I, who, I don't know where she went, got the opportunity to help Bill in the garden the last year that he did the garden. And so we always said he was the brains and we were the hands, and we had very, very incapable hands. So he taught us everything, and I'll tell a quick story about planting a tomato. So as other people mentioned, he has very specific ways of doing things. And I actually we planted tomatoes with Bill and with Barney. They have 2 different ways. I know he's here too. Two different ways of doing things. They both think each other are wrong. But Bill's, and I think I see some, but he loved sun sugar, and he got us a special one to put in our area. And he's teaching us how to dig a tomato plant. And I am just not understanding what he's saying. And I'm digging, and I'm digging, and I'm digging, and he's screaming, and screaming, and screaming. And I'm digging, and screaming, screaming, screaming. And I finally get it. He says, "Stop. It's perfect." And it was a spiritual experience for me. It was so intense. And I told him, I would tell him this all the time, like, it was spiritual. This was I cannot describe to you the intensity of that experience. It was so intense, and he hated when I told him that story. But the intensity at which he did everything, the intensity of the relationship that we had with him for a year was incredibly powerful, and I still think about him every day. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So.
Hello, everybody. Jane, good to see you. I'm Brian Keyes, and very briefly, there are many other members of the board of the Aquatine Watershed Association here. Danny was one. And I have to say, it was formed largely because of Bill getting together with a few other locals, Malcolm Brooks, Stephen Phillips, I believe, who was here, came into my law office locally and asked if I would like to join the board. I said, well, why me? They said, we'd like to have a free lawyer. Bill made himself, and then we all agreed he was the best man for the job to be the head of the nominating committee to get other people on the board. He was an amazing judge of character. He could tell somebody that would be good. And I think every member of our board was selected by Bill. And he did an incredible job. We have a very vibrant watershed association. Thanks to Bill. One little thing about Bill, he's pretty particular. I could always count on Bill to carefully review the minutes. Having served many positions there, I did serve as secretary once. That's the toughest position. You've got to write those minutes. And I could always count on Bill. And I proudly thought once I had it nailed. He said, well, there was only one mistake. I'm a Mac, not a Mick. I'd never made that mistake again. But he always kept us on mission at our board meetings. He was very good at guiding us and moving us into a very positive direction and to helping us be what we are today, helping this township be greener and better. Thank you.
Oh, yes, yes, please come up, just come up.
Thank you. I also did not plan to speak today and did not prepare anything in particular, but I think that everything I've heard today, there's one thing I can say about Bill MacDowell. He gave a very even experience to everyone. Everything that someone has said, I feel I have experienced. My name is Pat Ludwig, and I was on the board of Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, which was a place that meant a lot to him, but it was also a place that he made a huge difference for. He was a mentor to me, he was a leader, but he also had incredible foresight. He made some arrangements back in 1997 for a management agreement for that particular preserve that has put us on a trajectory for the modern world. And I believe that we now have a new executive director who has really made huge differences, but I think it would make Bill so happy to see the place that he has really, that he really helped to shape, to take flight. And I had to laugh. His best time to call me and tell me what he thought, I did become chair of the board, was at 10:30 at night. Before I was chair of the board, I was the secretary. I had many corrections on my minutes, my spelling, my grammar, Mick, not Mac. So I feel like he was a father figure, he was a mentor, he was a leader, and I hear that from everyone who has spoken. And he changed my life. I was retired when I took that position, and I felt like I was reborn and really learned so much. So I can't say more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Eric Stoner, and my family, my mother is here, my father sadly could not be here, along with my two sisters. We've been family friends with the MacDowells for ever. I mean, since the early 70s. And the one thing I want all of you to just take a moment to think about just think about a word describing Bill. One word. Just think about that for a moment. A quick story. I mean, we grew up on this property. This pool, that pond, this garden, that orchard. He's had such an impact on all of us in so many ways, amazing ways. I remember, I had so much respect for Bill for what he had done, and myself as a young lad trying to make it in the world. I have a love for photography. It's been my love since I was 7, maybe, something like that. My father said to me, why don't you go over to Bill and talk to him and see if he can work a job for you somehow. Well, Bill had many connections, as I'm sure many of you know, and Bill got me an interview with the publisher of Rodale Press, which publishes that, and plus Reader's Digest and a whole bunch of other stuff. I thought this was the best thing in the world. So I went up and into Bill's study up here in the front room, and he talked to me briefly for 3 hours, I think. Preparing me. Now I'm 19 years old. Didn't know, I thought I had some pretty pictures, and he sent me to this interview in Allentown, Pennsylvania, because he knew this guy could probably get me a job. And I went up there and showed him my pretty pictures. I had some pretty pictures of girls and stuff like that, just that I thought were the most amazing thing in the world. And then he kindly told me to take a hike, and, you could probably do best somewhere else. And I thought, wow, that really sucked. But I thought I was, everything. He was not going to hire me. Well, the one thing that Bill had instilled on me, and still does to this day, is, and I've heard it before earlier today, is perseverance. And that stuck with me throughout my career. And I'm now work for the largest camera manufacturer in the world as an advisor to them. So props to Bill for perseverance and teaching that. All the teaching that Bill does, that's his life's work, So thank you for lending me your husband, your father, for the short time in that front study, because it prepared me for a lot. But the barefoot water skiing, which I witnessed in Long Island, really impressed me. We went on a trip, I think, with you guys up there, and that was just an amazing time. And all of those times, again, this property, I'm going to miss this property. But more importantly, the people, the 4 of you, with this property. So have you guys had a moment to think about a word describing Bill? Just yell them out.
Nimble.
Intense. Ornery.
All business.
All business. Yeah, so everybody has an experience with Bill. And I think the word impact has, for me, and probably for you, a lasting effect on your being and your relationship with Bill. And that I will never forget, and I am grateful to have known him, and I am grateful to know your entire family. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. What amazing things that you have all said about Dad. Thank you for sharing your stories, your memories, your thoughts. He was quite a man. He had so much to give, and we all miss him enormously. we're going to have refreshments over in front of the house there.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. We can do that every once in a while when I start to lose it. But before we adjourn for food and drink and more stories and more sharing and more enjoying each other's company, there are a couple of people that I'd like to thank in addition to all of you who have shared things today. So one, Adam mentioned that he and Lauren, but also Julie and Barney, they all gardened with Dad in his last summer. And one of the things I'm happiest about, and Doug mentioned it, and actually I think a couple of others mentioned it, but he was able to do what he loved doing up until the end. He was coming in from the garden on Sunday when he collapsed. He died on Thursday morning. But that gardening, he had decided he couldn't have the garden because he wasn't capable physically of doing it. And then he started ordering seeds. And it was Adam, Lauren, Julie, and Barney who made that possible.
And you too, Anne.
Yeah, well, we did a bit of work, didn't we? Martin and I came and helped as well. Thanks to also people like Phil and Mary who came and thinned the peaches. That they wouldn't have had a peach crop if it hadn't been for friends like that. And I know there were others. I can only remember Phil and Mary, and apologies if you were one of the others. But they had a fabulous peach crop thanks to help with thinning. And we had some of those peaches last night, and we'll probably have some tomorrow for breakfast. So, thank you for everybody who helped allow him to continue doing what he wanted to do. Rich mentioned how important Mom was to Dad and to his life, and it's obviously a really tough transition for her. They were married for 67 years, and I want to thank Nina McKissick, who moved in soon after Dad died, and who has allowed her to stay here and has helped her to adapt to her new life. Steve Swanson deserves thanks for more things than I can possibly mention. For today, he created this slideshow and some music to go with it. He set up the sound system, he tilled the gardens, he mowed the lawns and did various other things to make the property look nice and much, much more. But it's not just about today. Over the years, he has supported Mom and Dad and kept this property going. He's become a dear friend along the way. He's amazingly caring, who we can always count on to have Mom and Dad's best interests in heart. So thank you, Steve. Thanks to all of those of you who brought food for today. There are great contributions from a number of people, including a dish with Dad's rhubarb and Dad's honey, so don't miss that one. Thanks to the person who put a lovely vase with flowers on it, out where the stand used to be when Dad died. I don't know who that was. I would love to know. So please tell me if you would, if you're here. Lastly, as you all know, Dad loved nothing more than to share the produce of his garden. You may have noticed that there are loads of tomato plants over there. They are indeed Adam's sun sugars. Those were Dad's favorite tomatoes. They're small, they're yellow, they're very sweet, they're absolutely delicious. And we would love it if you would take several plants home and put them in your garden and enjoy those tomatoes, thinking of Dad. Now, they are here because John Yerkes very, very kindly planted them, nurtured them, watered them, brought them over. And I think he was helped by Barney as well with that. But enormous thanks to John, who was Dad's friend and grew various things for him in his garden over the years, as well as creating these wonderful plants for you to take home. And there are some tomato cages over there. So anybody who doesn't have one and would like one, please help yourself. There are also some great row covers, so if you need row covers, we've got them. Thank you again for coming today. Thank you mostly for your friendship and love of Dad. It's what made his life so rich. let's continue sharing memories as we enjoy food and drink. And most of all, I want to thank my dad for all that he gave to me, and there's so many others.
Element.